I'm going to try and be hopeful, but in answer to your question, no. The Palestine Action protest tomorrow absolutely should not go ahead. They can do that at any time. The one last night also, I think, was disgraceful. It should have been called off. And I am following the flotilla. I think there are some in the Palestine solidarity movement that, you really need to read the room. And what I said to your producer is that today, I think, should be about wrapping our arms around our Jewish community. So, no, please, I don't think you should read out those texts that are just going to offend them, make them more scared. I think it also reinforces some really ugly tropes about some of these people who supposedly are empathetic or for humanity when they come out with this nonsense. And I think today, we're at a really fragile but precious moment in our country and in our history where it's a time for unity. We can grab this, especially in a country that's so inflamed with racism.
Sometimes it's not about which side of the debate you're on. It's about whether anyone is actually listening. In today's clip, we're watching a rare moment of clarity on British radio. A caller who's attended over 24 pro-Palestine protests suddenly says something that shocks even longtime listeners. She argues that, in this particular moment, protests should pause. Not because the cause has changed, but because empathy and timing matter. It's a conversation that cuts straight into the heart of a country divided, torn between outrage, solidarity, and exhaustion. Before we dive in, what's your take on this? Should protests ever pause out of respect during national tragedy? Or should people always have the right to make their voices heard, no matter what? Comment your thoughts below. And while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Now, let's roll the clip.
The first is from Dan, who writes, as a British Jew who is appalled by the attack on the Manchester synagogue yesterday, I am nevertheless perfectly able to understand the difference between an anti-Semitic attack and a protest against the actions of a sovereign state against the people of Gaza. The Home Secretary seems to be going out of her way to conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. It's shameful. This should be resisted. And then Julia, both at 10:21, so they both came in at exactly the same point in the programme, who writes, and this is and was my position at that moment, and is still now, it's a no-brainer, James. Out of kindness and care for fellow citizens, the protest should be postponed, not cancelled. And there it is, somewhere between those, well, there is no truth, is there? On this, just opinion, and I want to read this from Alex because it's quite important, and something that I should reflect on. I love you, James, and I 99% agree with you. Feels a bit silly today, that rule that you have to tell me that you love me before you criticise me, because there's not a lot of love in some of the messages coming into the studio. But you're seeing the wrong conflation. To say free Palestine in almost any situation is both defensible and necessary. But on that football pitch at that time, this is referring back to a caller called Rick who rang in from Manchester to describe events at a recent football game, I think involving one of his children. It wasn't directed at Israeli policy, at Benjamin Netanyahu or at the IDF. It was clearly and deliberately conflating them with the members of a Jewish football team. In that case, then the intent was anti-Semitic, and that's from Alex in Tulse Hill. I think he's probably right, isn't he, that the context in that case does define the offence. And of course, what you have to acknowledge at this point is that lots of people who shout Free Palestine in any context whatsoever will also be anti-Semitic. But the massive majority of people who shout Free Palestine, to borrow Alex's statistic, 99% of situations will not be. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you prescribe or police that. But I do know that most of the people who have expressed deep concerns about freedom of speech in this country in recent months will have absolutely nothing at all to say about it. Farah is in Southfields. Farah, what made you pick up the phone?
So we've spoken so many times before, and I am somebody who has been now on 26 Palestine marches, 2 anti-Tommy Robinson ones, 1 anti-Farage one. So I'm on the streets protesting a great deal, it feels. I am going to try and be hopeful, but in answer to your question, no. The Palestine Action protest tomorrow absolutely should not go ahead. They can do that at any time. The one last night also, I think, was disgraceful. It should have been called off. And I am following the flotilla. I think there are some in the Palestine solidarity movement that, you really need to read the room. And what I said to your producer is that today, I think, should be about wrapping our arms around our Jewish community. So no, please, I don't think you should read out those texts that are just going to offend them, make them more scared. I think it also reinforces some really ugly tropes about some of these people who supposedly are empathetic or for humanity when they come out with this nonsense. And I think today, we're at a really fragile but precious moment in our country and in our history where it's a time for unity. We can grab this, especially in a country that's so inflamed with racism.
Do you think we can? I'm going to read you something. I'm probably not going to read the bin of bile that constitutes a tiny proportion of the message coming into my studio, but I will read you some words from the front page of the best-selling newspaper in this country, if I may. From woke police chiefs to left-wing politicians, the list of the killer's enablers is legion. They should have blood on their consciences. Now, I don't know how somebody with a deeply rooted prejudices or a slightly fragile grasp on life and reality at the moment will respond to that, but it reads to me like I don't even need to use my own description of it. From woke police chiefs to left-wing politicians, the list of the killer's enablers is legion. They should have blood on their consciences is on the front page of the Daily Mail, which means it will be probably a tenth as vile as what is swilling through Elon Musk's platform. And I want to be with you and hope that this will be a moment for unity, rejection. But that is where, and that's why I opened the show today by talking about the three levels of public discourse. You've got that, you've got social media, and then you've got us. You've got people like you and Judith and Richard who can have conversations about this and have common goals, but who, I don't know, seem to be disappearing beneath the waves sometimes, Farah.
Well, we have to rise up. We have to rise up because we are better than this. And I think that when I'm talking about unity, it's not just about calling into a radio show and saying nice things.
No, of course it's not.
I'm somebody who's very practical. I have to do something when I'm upset or if I think something's wrong. So my children and I had a conversation yesterday. I'm going to contact my local synagogue today. I've never been there. I don't know who they are, in order to see what I can do to support my local Jewish community. I reached out to my close friends. I reached out to Jewish friends who I've not spoken to or worked with for 20 years. I reached out to parents in my year group that I barely know. I'm a class rep, but I still barely, it's a very big year group.
Sure.
My children are going in today to speak to the school about a unity assembly. They're going to try and find and fundraise for some type of cross-cultural, multi-faith charity that supports youth groups. Now is the time for protecting our citizens and our values. And I always think at the absolute worst of times, there is always that light. There is always that opportunity to say, this is not us. This is not what we will put up with. This is not who we are. And by, pushing that protest back tomorrow, and for me, the one last night really made me sick. Last night I listened to LBC from the morning all the way through. You were brilliant yesterday, as were your presenters, till midnight, till I actually couldn't listen to the heartbreak and the fear of Jewish people calling in. We don't. And
then for people who don't know this, the protests that broke out, I think in Manchester and London, were unplanned and were somehow in response to a terror attack on a synagogue.
My mind, it's just boggling. It's like, this is a moment for pause, for
reflection. You've been on 23 marches protests in solidarity with 26. The people. 26 in solidarity with, that's not an opinion, that's counting. In solidarity with the people of Palestine. And when you saw people choosing that moment to ally themselves with your cause in a very public way, you were genuinely disgusted. I can hear it in your voice.
I was disgusted. It really upset me. I think it puts back the cause, it muddies the waters, it allows people who are bad actors to...
it's the conflation from the other side.
And it's the conflation. And I had this conversation with a Jewish friend yesterday, and she said, I don't think people understand that you can be Jewish and not agree with what's happening in Gaza. And honestly, James, in this country, with the amount of media, the amount of conversation, especially that all of you have on LBC, I just think that people who are still conflating the two are willingly doing that. It's intentional. It's there to hurt. And it doesn't help us. We have to focus on what we can practically do in order to protect our society, fight against the fascism, keep Farage out, and do all of these things. That's what we should be focused on. I am so focused on Palestine.
Clearly.
But the protest tomorrow is wrong. Have some respect, have some empathy. Jews are terrified.
I'm with you completely. And I needed to hear it from you, actually, just to have my own thoughts clarified in a way. And I'm far from alone. Let me read you what William has said. This is an excellent call. I'm also 100% behind the flotilla, behind ending the genocide in Gaza, and I'm unrelentingly anti-Farage, Musk and all the rest of them. But I agree, this is the time for unity, and not for protests or marches. It doesn't surprise me that newspaper is taking the opposite route, says William Keston. Farah, thank you. Really thank you. I know we've spoken a lot, and Richard may be spitting nails at the fact that you mentioned you've been on the show a lot of times, but of course you went straight into answering the question that we're actually asking, although today for once that isn't necessarily a requirement to come on air 3 minutes after 11. What are you supposed to do you think, to the woke police chiefs or the left-wing politicians who are described on the front page of the Daily Mail as enabling a terrorist killer and having blood on their consciences? What do you think they want you to do to the woke police chiefs and the left-wing politicians? How do they want you to respond to this description? That's what Will and Farah and I are talking about, that simple choice between division and violence, whether verbal, physical or murderous, and unity, solidarity, and as Joe Cox used to observe all the time, that what we have in common is greater than what keeps us apart. But that has never felt flimsier to me.
That was powerful, and it really shows how emotion and empathy can cut through division when words alone can't. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And keep those thoughts coming in the comments. Thanks for watching.